So today's the topic of today's workshop, as Heather said, is how do you make decisions on which social media platforms you should be on? It is a dizzying, it is a dizzying decision. Sometimes we're faced with all kinds of what I call digital peer pressure to adopt to all kinds of different platforms. We're constantly, if you're like me, you're constantly getting articles, that are saying, oh my God, if you're not on TikTok, your business is going to die. So what I have found over the years of doing workshops like this with people is one of the biggest decisions you need to make is where does your energy go? And so my goal today is to, one, give you a 3-part decision-making process that will help you evaluate each social media platform. And then we're actually going to go through what I consider to be really the only relevant ones for the vast majority of businesses. The caveat here is that this is a workshop for people who are marketing a business or an organization. This is not a workshop for influencers. And the vast majority of the information you're going to see on how to use social media platforms that is an entire industry unto itself. So most of the articles you're going to read or a lot of the advice you're going to get is actually from companies that want you to hire them to run your social media platform. So of course they want you to think that you're not doing enough. They want you to think that you couldn't possibly do it on your own. And they want you to think that you should be hiring somebody else or subscribing to something. So what works for an influencer, somebody who wants to end up with 1 million plus, followers, so they can actually just make money posting things to social media platforms, is very, very different than marketing on social media. And I am going to look at everything through that lens. So it's very possible that I'm going to say things today that are going to seem to contradict other articles you may have read. This is also a super fast changing dynamic field. And so it's very possible, again, that you might see information. So one of the things I will say to you when you're looking at information about social media, make sure it is up to date. What was true 2 years ago is very, very different than what is true today. So lots of people, they've heard trends, the big boogeyman that you should never post the same thing to Instagram and Facebook. That boogeyman was killed long ago, and I will talk about that today. So make sure you're looking at the information in that way. So I will give you summary of what I'm going to present today. I will give you what I view as kind of a 3-pronged approach to evaluating what you want to do in terms of not just social media, but digital marketing in general. Then what we're going to do is we're going to look at each one of the platforms through those 3 criteria. And then at the end of it, I will summarize basically what we've looked at and throw a couple of addendums in there. So if at any time you have a question for me, please make sure that you put it in the chat is the best way. And if I don't notice it, then Heather can flag me down. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And I'm going to change my view. Oh, no, I want the... Okay, there we go. And I have to hit the present button. Don't worry, I'm a trained professional. So just so you know, while I'm presenting, I can't see you on the screen. So if you're waving at me, trying to get my attention, the best thing to do is put something in the chat. I will see that happen, and I will look at that as soon as I see something pop into the chat. I just wanted to make one quick adjustment there. It's distracting me a little bit. Okay. Oh, geez. Maybe I'll start at the beginning of my presentation. Okay, so What we're talking about today is choosing social media platforms. Like I said, it's constantly changing. It can be very imposing. The good news today is that, it's actually quite a bit simpler. Which platforms you should be on for most people is a bit of a no-brainer. They're really, the pressure to adopt some of the newer platforms does not make a lot of sense if you are actually marketing an organization, as opposed to trying to, like I say, just trying to get 1 million followers, which for most of us is completely inachievable and not necessary. Okay. So just a quick definition. Social media is part of a digital marketing strategy that should include, absolutely, number one, Google My Business, which was our last workshop that we did. If you are having difficulty with Google My Business, or your business or organization does not have a good Google business listing, then please contact me and I will help you with that. It should include your website. So 2 years ago, this was a little bit up in the air. Basically, pretty much everybody agrees. Again, your website is the one place on the internet that you own the real estate. You can remodel, you can change the colors, you can put a window in a different place in your website because you own it. All of the social media platforms, you are either what I would call a tenant, or even worse, a squatter. I used to say it was like renting an apartment, and that, you didn't have a lot of control over that little space that you owned. It's gotten even worse. I would say it's actually more like having a stall at a market, where whoever's running the market one week might give you that stall that's got the big pedal in front of it. The next week they might just say to you, I'm sorry, we didn't have enough room for you, or whatever. I mean, it's not quite that bad, but Instagram and Facebook particularly have become a bit notorious the last couple of years for just changing the rules on us at some point. So your website is your home. And it is, if you are a business that has a website, it is where you want to be driving people because you have control over it. If you as a business are relying on only a Facebook page, you need to know that you're relying on something that you do not own, which is tenuous at best, but it might be the right decision for you based on your budget. Really, budget is kind of the only reason for that I can think of. Sorry, I went forward too fast. New controls. Social media, like I said, social media is a little bit like having a stall at a market. It's very useful, but the rules can change on you. And the fourth that a lot of people don't think of, and I shouldn't say that you have to be doing a newsletter, but a newsletter is actually an incredibly powerful possible tool for you when it comes to digital media. I am not going to cover newsletters today. If you'd like to talk to me about newsletters, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about newsletters. They're incredibly powerful tools. So here's the first of, like I said, I have a 3-pronged approach for evaluating these things. Number one, what are your goals? And I say this to people all the time. Your job is to serve your customers and build your business. It is not to entertain people. Lots of the pressure coming from especially Instagram and TikTok and some of the other video-based social media platforms is all about how many how many likes you get, or how many comments you get, or how many shares you get. The example I've been using lately is there is a small business in Haliburton County that has 2 reels on Instagram with well over 1 million views. They still only have about 350 followers on Facebook, which is one of the most powerful marketing tools on social media. So that's really great that that person has put a video up that's entertaining over 1 million people, but they're not getting customers out of it. So don't fall into the trap of believing that your job is to entertain people. Your job is to run your business. So don't let that social media peer pressure affect your decisions. 2, how much time do you have? This is a huge thing for any small business owner or any person who's part of a not-for-profit or any other kind of an organization. You need to be very honest with yourself. Do I have a whole bunch more time to dedicate? And so I'm going to evaluate each one of the platforms today by how much time they take for you to have a meaningful presence there. And the third goal, the third kind of evaluation question that I have that I ask is, what are your skills? What is your skill set? Be honest with yourself. Are you comfortable pointing your camera at yourself and shooting a head, a talking head video? For most of us, no, we're not comfortable with that. Do you even know how to shoot a talking head video and put those cool captions on it that are on Instagram? Lots of people don't know how to do that. And you need to be very honest with yourself about, as you would think about adopting a new social media platform, do I have the skill set as well to effectively use that social media platform? So there you go. Those are my 3 questions. We're going to look at each one of the platforms, and we're going to look at them kind of within that framework so that you can kind of begin to evaluate those social media platforms. Does anybody have any questions before I kind of launch into actually looking at platforms? I'd be curious to hear what people might be thinking, or if there's maybe something that you think should be in this criteria for judging that maybe I've skipped, because I'm certainly not the smartest person on this Zoom call. Okay, I don't see anything, so we're going to forge ahead. So let's look at each one of those decision-making questions in a little bit more in depth. What are your goals? Number 1. So every platform has an audience. It has a way of engaging that audience, and it has different levels of effectiveness in actually marketing your business. Some of the platforms are very, very good at actually driving business to your web page or to a product that you might have online. Some of them, even though they're really fun and they're really engaging, are not that good at driving business to where you want that business to go. How much time do you have? Every platform you add is an opportunity and an increase to your workload, and you need to be honest with yourself. You're way better off to have a very good presence in 1 or 2 places than you are to have a scattered presence, across 6 different social media platforms. And what are your skills? So every platform requires a different skill set. Some of them require you to be good with graphics. Some of them require you to be good with either photography or video. Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest is another good one that require a certain set of either video or photography skills to use them well. And then others don't require that. LinkedIn, which we're going to talk about a little today. A lot of people are shocked to learn that LinkedIn has become relevant again, but it has become in certain ways. That is just not an issue on LinkedIn. And so we'll actually examine each one of the platforms based on those. Writing skills are probably the one skill that you cannot get away from unless you are specifically unless you decide that you're going to go specifically with some of the image video based platforms, then writing is probably not as big of a deal. The importance of writing is definitely a generational thing. Anybody who's, within 10 years of my age, I'm not telling you what that is naturally has a tendency to default towards really good writing skills and traditional paragraph based writing. That applies on some of these social media platforms. A more brief, much more casual way of writing applies more to more social media platforms, is what I'll say about that. So the platforms. So we're going to dive right into these and look at each one of them individually and evaluate them a little bit. I understand that people have very specific questions about how to use each one of the platforms. That's really beyond, I could do a workshop on each platform, obviously, and how to use it effectively. Having said that, if you do have a question, please go ahead and put it in the chat. And if I feel like it's bigger than what we can talk to today, then you and I can make arrangements to connect at another time. But don't hesitate to put that question in there, because it might be very, very simple to actually answer that question. So as I go through each one of the platforms, if you have a question about that, then please pop it in the chat, and I may or may not be able to answer it today. There's lots of depth in each one of these platforms, or potential depth, I guess I should say. So let's start with a big one, Facebook. Facebook is the no-brainer of the social media world for a couple of reasons. It's ideal in its balance of how much time it takes, what skill sets, the skills that it takes to use it effectively, and your actual engagement with potential customers. And again, I'm going to use engagement in a slightly different way than most of the social media world does. Typically, if you're familiar with the way the insights or the analytics on your social media platforms, if you're using those, engagement is a very, very specific word, and it has to do with how many people are reacting to a post that you put up. When I talk about engagement today, what I'm talking about is the possibility of turning someone into a customer. Because ultimately, as actual marketers, that is what we're interested in. I'm very fond of saying, 10 customers is way better than 10,000 likes. 10,000 likes, especially on Instagram, where people like by just double tapping the screen, are nearly meaningless for us as true marketers, people that are trying to grow our business and engage with our potential customers or our existing customers. So Facebook, the time commitment on Facebook, I would call medium. You do not need to post every day on Facebook. You can develop a rhythm that's much, much lower frequency than that. The skills to post on Facebook are low to medium. I mean, Facebook posts can be completely text-based and still be fairly effective. Can you develop really flashy videos in Facebook? Yes, you can, but you don't need to use it effectively. You can get really, really high engagement just by using well-written text and an attractive picture are really the only two things you need to be able to do on Facebook. The most important thing, let's look at the audience. And my stats that I'm using today are Canadian stats. I'm not using worldwide stats, and so they're going to differ. So how is Canada different from the rest of the world? We have one of the highest, if not the highest, social media engagement amongst our population of any country in the world. We're upwards of 90% of the population being engaged on social media. And so our stats are slightly different than the worldwide stats. And the demographic stats that I'm going to give you are the same way. So Facebook is the #1 platform in Canada. 78% of all Canadian social media users use Facebook on a regular basis. The demographic is actually quite wide. It bulges right around to 25 to 44 years. But there's actually there's quite a good engagement above 44 years as well. Not so much below 25. It is not a good place to engage for people below 25. In terms of actual marketing engagement, it is #1 of all the social media platforms in its ability to drive people where you want them to go on the internet. And like I said, where is that? That should be either your web page or someplace where someone can take a very specific marketable action. So here's what I mean about either entertaining people or actually marketing your business. If you're putting posts up that people can't take some kind of an action on, then you essentially are entertaining them. And there's some validity in that. People value you if you make their day brighter. It's okay to put a cool video up and just say, hey, I thought this was neat. I thought you would too. You're aligning yourself with your customers. But ultimately, at some point during your marketing week or marketing month, you need to be giving people an opportunity to take a marketable action on social media. Facebook wins there. It has the highest possibility of engaging people that way. It also has a very easy and effective ad purchasing and monitoring system. I had a couple of people contact me before and ask if I was going to speak about Facebook ads. I will very quickly say that Facebook ads, the brilliant thing about Facebook ads is that they're very targetable, and you only pay when someone takes a marketable action. So you establish a budget, and then what you do is you link that budget to clicks, and you only pay when somebody takes that marketable action, which is brilliant in terms of a marketing campaign. You can delve very, very deeply into Facebook ads, and I would be happy to arrange for you to speak to someone that knows that much better than I do, because it's a big, fairly complex world. Delving into it with your toes is not a big deal. Being effective at it is a very different thing. I know I had some people on here. Is there anybody that wants to chime in really quickly about Facebook ads or question anything I just said about Facebook?
Hey, Tom. Sorry, Glenn Scott here. Let me put my picture back. I guess I'm struggling a little bit on what you're saying about Facebook drives the best marketable action. How do you compare? How can you compare that to another app? I guess how do you test that? Or how do you know what drives the best?
That's actually tested by multiple organizations, people that make their living doing that. And so what they do is they look at, what they would do is they would have a client. And I know this because I manage both the Instagram and the Facebook feed for the county of Haliburton. And so when I go in and I look at my insights, and I look at how many people are actually clicking through, say, from Facebook to where I want them to go, which for us is to our webpage featuring different stories, different aspects of the county, compared to Instagram. The actual click-through rate from Facebook is on the order of 20 times higher than it is on Instagram. So it's an actual measured thing.
So that what you're saying, so that's the analytics in behind Facebook, where you can see that connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other reason for that, Glenn, is that because in a Facebook post, I can put multiple actual direct links that somebody can click right on. I cannot do that on most other social media platforms, especially Instagram and especially TikTok. Neither one of those allow you to put that clickable thing right in a post until you become a verified account with over 10,000 followers, which these days is very, very difficult to do.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay, that's fascinating. That's
great question, though. Yeah. So all of this is, and I will send folks the link. So just let me. Okay, where am I there? Glenn, can you still hear me? Yeah, you can still hear me? Okay, for some reason, something strange happened with my screen sharing. I don't know what. Oh, there it is. Thank you. I will send a link out later on that has an amazingly detailed, if you're a person that needs that kind of information, amazingly detailed infographic on all the social media platforms and how they actually perform in terms of both audience and in terms of engagement. So you can look at that.
Thank you. That's good.
So Instagram, I'm covering Instagram second, even though it's number 3 in Canada in terms of use. The reason I'm doing that is because it is owned by the same company as Facebook, and you can link the two of them together. If you have business profiles on both Instagram and Facebook, you can link the two of them together, and you can basically almost chop your time commitment in half to be able to post to both of them. And I say almost because there is a caveat between cross-posting between Instagram and Facebook, and I'll cover that in just a second. So Instagram, to use Instagram effectively, to stay high in the, for Instagram to promote you in their algorithm, you need to be posting a little more often than you are on Facebook. So the time commitment's a little bit higher on Instagram than it is on Facebook. But there are a couple kind of tricky ways around that. In terms of technique, the skills I would say are a little bit higher than Facebook. Your imagery needs to be really engaging on Instagram. We all know how we use Instagram. Facebook people still use on desktop devices fairly often. Instagram is almost completely used on your phone. And so you know what you're doing. You're scrolling, right? It's like flip up, flip up, flip up. An image has to be bright, colorful, and grabby to get somebody to stop. So there is a skill set there that is not as important on Facebook, that is important on Instagram. That's why I think it's a little bit higher skill development. The audience on Instagram is number 3 in Canada. 53% of all social media users are using Instagram. That's growing faster on Instagram than it is on Facebook. Facebook is a bit static in terms of its growth. Instagram is growing faster. It's a younger demographic for sure, although it is growing faster with an older demographic than Facebook is, but Facebook still outstrips it quite a bit. I mean, if you look at that, it's over 20%. It's almost 25% higher on Facebook than it is on Instagram in terms of Canadian social media users. Engagement on Instagram is what I would call low to medium. You cannot put a direct link in the comment of an Instagram post. You can type it in there, but it will not show up as a direct link. All it will show up is a bunch of text, and research shows that no one is copying and pasting that text into their browser and going to the link that you want them to do. If somebody can't click on that link with their finger, they're not using it. So your option to actually drive customers where you want them to go in Instagram, besides a couple of tricks that insiders kind of know, but for general users, is the link in your bio. You're allowed to put one link in your bio, and there's a whole bunch of different, I shouldn't say a whole bunch, there's a couple of tricks to maximizing that. And all I will say today is that if you are not using one of the link in bio apps on Instagram, then you're probably missing click-throughs onto your webpage. Definitely at the county, when we started using what's called Linktree, and there are lots of different apps out there, the number of hits that we started getting from Instagram, it doubled almost overnight and has been growing ever since then. Again, that's a topic I'd love to chat with somebody later on about if that's meaningful for you. Cross-posting from Instagram to Facebook is what I think of as a no-brainer. A few years ago, you used to read articles that said, never post the same thing to Instagram as you do to Facebook. And I actually have friends who are users like, oh, it really irritates me when somebody posts the same thing to Instagram as they do to Facebook. My response to that is, why are you following them on both platforms? You don't need to follow somebody on both of those platforms. You're not really gaining anything unless there's somebody that specifically changes their content and they're putting some content on Instagram. But the research shows that there is no penalty. There is no penalty to actually gaining customers from cross-posting from Instagram to Facebook. Here's the caveat. You have to customize your Facebook post so that you can put a direct link in there when you're asking somebody to take a direct action. One of my pet peeves is I can tell when somebody has not done that is because there will be a Facebook post, and at the bottom of the Facebook post, it'll say, and click on the link in my bio for more information, when there could be a direct link directly in that post. And link in bio doesn't exist on Facebook. So I put these two together because as far as I'm concerned, for most businesses, for most organizations, it is a bit of a no-brainer to use Instagram and Facebook. Facebook, absolutely. If you don't want to get into Instagram, great. I I would say definitely choose Facebook over Instagram these days if you're actually marketing to customers. And then for a very low time cost to you, you can actually get into Instagram and just use the same content across both of those things, as long as you're tweaking it just a little bit. When you cross post it to Facebook, again, that's a whole technique kind of a workshop, which I am happy to sit down and do with anybody that wants to figure out how to do that. This one's probably going to surprise a few people. The number 2 social media platform, and a lot of people don't even think of it as a social media platform, is YouTube. So 20% higher use in Canada on YouTube than on Instagram. It is a very wide age range, so much so that YouTube started a YouTube Kids app. Part of its protection, but kids were using YouTube in a very, very different way. Just a quick aside, one of the most popular things on YouTube Kids is unboxing videos, which I personally do not understand, but are wildly, wildly popular with kids. And there are like 11-year-olds making whack loads of money simply unboxing things that they've ordered from Amazon. Go figure. The time commitment on YouTube, the initial time commitment is high because you need to create video and you need to post that video, both of which take time. The ongoing weekly, daily time commitment, once you have that content up there, is quite low. It's not, your users are normally not going to engage with you as much on YouTube. It's more of a one-way kind of a thing on YouTube than it is on the other social media platforms. The skill set is high on YouTube. Producing compelling video and posting that video is an entire skill set that's fairly technical. And I'll talk about that later on. This is one of those areas where it makes sense to pursue a skill set that you don't necessarily have if you want to be on YouTube. Engagement is quite high. It's the second highest of any of the social media platforms. You have a really high possibility of driving people exactly where you want to go. It's also, in terms of time, people spend the most time on YouTube of all the social media platforms. And so why would a business use YouTube? You know, I just told you don't want to be an entertainer. And a lot of people think of YouTube as something you just sit around and watch entertaining music videos or cat videos or surfing videos or whatever it is that you really like to watch. Or you do what lots and lots of people do, you use it to listen to music. Lots of companies do an incredibly good job of engaging customers, and both existing customers and possible customers, by putting up detailed either how-to videos or here's what our business has to offer for you videos. Ironically, if you're a drywaller, putting up a how-to video, I mean, there's amazing drywall videos on YouTube if you've never seen them. And you might think, okay, why is a professional drywaller giving away his secrets? He's giving them away. He's not giving them away. What he's doing, he's informing people how incredibly difficult it is to actually do drywall well. And so he's actually gaining customers, not giving away his trade secrets. It's an area that I know at the county we don't do a great job of on YouTube. And it's probably one of the, for certain businesses, it's probably one of the places that most of us could achieve the most growth in terms of customer engagement. Like I say, a bit of a surprise for lots of people. Or if there's anything else I need to say about that. I don't think so. Anybody have any questions about the 3 that I've covered so far? Glenn?
Yeah, so YouTube, I'm assuming when you mean the early setup, it's just the early setup of the video system you're going to eventually evolve. But you have to come up with a strategy, presumably, like of what am I going to do on YouTube? Like, there's only so many drywall videos I'm going to do if I'm a drywall guy.
Yep.
But what would you be? You said you were short on the use of YouTube from the county perspective. What do you think the county should be doing with YouTube?
I think we could have a lot more kind of short form, very engaging videos about what the possibilities are for experiences to have in the Haliburton Highlands. Whether they would, I could think of, I mean, I've got, and you're exactly right, you have to be a little bit more strategic. When you're talking about long-term video, anywhere from a minute on up, you really need to be thinking about, what is your storyline? How are you going to film that? So you're actually telling your storyline. Then there's editing involved. So for me, what would I put on there? I would put a video on about how great an attraction, say, the sculpture forest is, and what the story is behind the sculpture forest. Luckily, the sculpture forest people have done an amazing set of videos. And so what we do is we actually share those videos on our channel. But the time and the potential money commitment can be quite big. To produce a good quality 5 to 10 minute video, you could be in for $7 or $8 grand very easily. I'm just going to go to the, are there stats about YouTube's converting to sales? There are actually, there's quite a few stats. The link that I'll send in about some of that, I will dig those up, and I'll make sure we include the links to that information later on. It's very similar to Facebook in that it's great because you can put direct links in lots of different ways into a YouTube video. How do you get the highlights section on the top of your Instagram page? Some people have them and others don't. Oh, that's a good question, Ashley. You have to have a professional account on Instagram to do that. And then there's just a specific set of steps you go through to get those highlights. So those of you that don't know what we're talking about when you're looking at an Instagram page, when you go to some people's profile, there's a series of little round buttons. And what they are is they're places that you can share stories, store stories that have a consistent theme. If you want to check out somebody that does a very, very good job of highlights, check out the Haliburton Forest feed on Instagram. One of the most active Instagram feeds on in the county. And they do a phenomenal job of using those highlights. Actually, that's quite a specific set of things, and I'd be happy to sit down with you sometime and go through that, or anybody else that is interested. Right on. I'm going to move on to the elephant in the room. TikTok. We're all hearing about TikTok being the fastest growing social media platform in the world. I forget what the stat is right now, but it's quite mind-boggling. It has, much higher use in Asian countries so far than it has in North American countries. In Canada, it is the 4th highest. It's 30%. So you can see in Canada, it actually lags quite a bit behind even Instagram in terms of the actual social media users in Canada. It also is a very interesting demographic. It's most heavily weighted down in the 16 to 24 demographic. So, for a lot of us, 16 to 24 is not the decision makers in most households. And that's one of the things I'm always looking at as a marketer. Definitely has users in other age groups. But the big bulge in the TikTok thing is much lower than it is in any other social media platforms. It is the fastest growing of any of the social media platforms. So it's one that all of us kind of need to keep an eye on and see where it's going. It's very similar to Instagram in terms of engagement. It's low in my assessment. It's very similar. I can't put a direct link in a comment on a TikTok video. I can put a link in my bio. But unless you're very, very good at pushing that link in bio thing, and the few stats I could find, it's hard to find really good stats on TikTok. The few stats I could find is that people are less likely to go to your bio on TikTok than they are on Instagram. Like I said, I throw this one in because I get asked all the time, should I be on TikTok? Should I be on TikTok? It's always up to you in terms of, if you want to reach that 16 to 24 demographic, then, or you just can't help yourself, you really want to make a dance video, then yeah, go for it. I'd love to hear what your success rate is. But it is the fastest growing of all the social media platforms. It's going to have to keep that up for a long time to ever catch up to something like Facebook. 30% of Canadian users compared to 75 or 78% of Canadian users. That's a big gap right now. And I'd love to know, somebody that's better at math than me could figure out what the gap is amongst that kind of golden demographic of actual decision makers in households. Yeah, but there may be somebody out there who's thinking 16 to 24, that's exactly my demographic. I'm going for it. Okay, do it, because that's the best social media platform for targeting that particular demographic. I wish I could say I would help you with TikTok, but I've managed to avoid it so far. What's next? Twitter, the social media platform that Donald Trump saved. Twitter was on its last legs before the Donald Trump presidency, and he literally kind of single-handedly saved Twitter. And then COVID basically saved every social media platform on the internet. Pre-COVID, lots of social media platforms were on the decline. During COVID, the use of every single social media platform increased because we're all stuck at home looking at screens a lot of the time. Twitter as a marketing tool. So I had a question about this because we used to use Twitter in the tourism department, and I contacted several people at other larger tourism organizations about what kind of luck they were having with Twitter, and they had felt like their engagement, well, they actually had the analytics to show their actual engagement on Twitter was decreasing, and it was decreasing significantly. Twitter, to me, seems to me that it's a great place to go. Lots of people use Twitter for news, or they use Twitter to belong to a kind of chat communities, groups of people that discuss certain topics. In terms of marketing a business, I don't see a lot of evidence that it's a really useful tool for actually driving engagement with your customers. There could be some niche businesses where I'm mistaken. I'd love to discover that. But as I said, about a year ago, I made the decision to I do not use Twitter for tourism promotion anymore. Certainly, if I were a journalist, I would be using Twitter. It is personally, that's one of the ways that I use it. And a lot of people I know, that's the way that they use Twitter as well, is for news and for unfolding news more than they do for discovering products or discovering destinations. The time commitment on Twitter is actually fairly high. To have a good Twitter account, you really need to be engaged and be posting several times a day. The skill set is quite low, except for that thing of getting out what you have to say to get out in 240 characters, which can be a little bit of a challenge. Like I say, it's number 5 in Canada, just under 30%. So it's actually very close to TikTok in terms of users. The demographic would be completely different between the two of them. You really can't compare of those. In terms of engagement, the other thing is you can post direct links. So, if you already have a Twitter feed that has really good followers, I would say, and you're having good luck with that, and that seems to contradict what I'm saying, don't abandon it just because of what I said. If you're already established someplace and it's working for you, the fact that I think it's low engagement should not affect your personal experience. If you're already engaging people there very effectively, then by all means, carry on with that. LinkedIn. This one might surprise a bunch of people as well. So LinkedIn is a social media platform. From a marketing perspective, it's a very, very different animal. The time commitment is low. You do not need to be posting regularly on LinkedIn, as long as all your information and your profile is up to date. And even doing that initial investment is not very high. The skill set, again, is fairly low. It's largely text-based. You can obviously, you can post video and pictures, but you don't need to be effective on LinkedIn. The audience, it's number 8 in Canada, 24%. And you might think number 8 in Canada is not that great, but that's only 5% lower and 6% lower than TikTok and Instagram on LinkedIn. It is a older age range. It basically attracts professionals, is what it does. It is small communities of like-minded professionals. So the engagement on LinkedIn is very unique, but could be potentially useful to you. It's high in small but very focused audiences. It's more networking than it is marketing, but networking can be marketing within certain businesses. It can be a very good recruiting platform. It's a very good place to discover very focused groups of people. So if you are hiring or recruiting people that have a very specific skill set, they're fairly easy to find on LinkedIn. Just checking the time real quick. What kind of business do I think LinkedIn could work for? If you are in the consulting business, if you are a professional that sells services to other professionals, or a business that sells business to services to other businesses, LinkedIn could be a very good place for you to be. There's very little fluff on LinkedIn. There's very little drama. It's pretty business. It's very, very focused. And like I say, you know, if you are looking for other groundwater engineers, LinkedIn is a great way to find those people, because people identify that way and they have a tendency to belong to groups on LinkedIn that let you find those people very, 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 very easily, and have very meaningful discussions with them. Like I say, it's not a entertaining kind of social media platform, but very, very much focused on connecting between professionals. Let me see. I can think of, I know half a dozen people in the Haliburton Highlands that their business is basically selling service, whether it's writing, whether it's editing, whether it's photography, whether it's any number of things, actually developing graphics. And LinkedIn would be a great way for you to connect to other people. People actually quite often put appeals out in communities to, say, a community of photographers and say, this is what I'm looking for, who out there has got that particular expertise. Drone photography, of, an exploding, who knew that every real estate agent in the Haliburton Highlands was going to become a drone pilot? If you had said that to them 10 years ago, they probably would have all laughed at you. Now it seems like an almost required kind of skill set amongst real estate agents. So the world does change. Pinterest, another interesting one. Almost as high, it's sitting right there at that 30% use rate, along with TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. Pinterest is more of a direct marketing platform than it is a networking platform. It's almost a collection of online stores, is the way to look at it. If you have a product that you would like to be selling online, Pinterest is a great place to be. It's specifically set up for people to find products that are related to things that they already like. It's a very, very different beast, and a very valuable beast if that's what you're doing. The time commitment is high. Maintaining your Twitter profile, and I know that's not exactly the right word in terms, sorry, not Twitter, Pinterest. Maintaining your presence on Pinterest requires lots of photography and lots of posting of photographs. And again, since all people are looking at is photographs, the quality of those photographs matters. The skill set is medium to high, again, and that's largely because of the photography that's involved on Pinterest. The audience, it's number 6 in Canada, and it is most heavily weighted towards females. It is a great way to find people that are, if you have a very, very specific product where your potential customer base could be widely spaced geographically, because of the way Pinterest shows things to people, it's a great way for people to find that kind of niche product. Where if you had a brick and mortar store, say here in Haliburton Highlands, that might not be a great it might not be a great venture for you because there's not that many people looking for your niche product right here on the ground. On Pinterest, those people are going to be able to find you much easier. They can find you almost any place else. The engagement's incredibly high for those people that are actually looking for what you have to offer. That's almost specifically what it's designed for. I know some people just cruise Pinterest just to kind of look at cool stuff, but by and large, people are looking for things when they go to Pinterest. Natalia, yes, that's a very good point. If you're looking at the specifics, there are very good tools for scheduling multiple posts on Pinterest that can lower the time aspect of that. No doubt about that. Pinterest is one of those platforms that I would need to connect you with someone that is an expert in it. I am not an expert. What I promote doesn't fit on Pinterest all that well. But I know there are some people right here that are very, very good users of Natalia. Are you using Pinterest a fair bit?
I was at one point. I was really adamant with posting like similar things, but to different boards, because then it gets picked up by different people.
Yep.
I was sitting at like 50,000 monthly users when I was doing that consistently, but I let it drop off. But wow. I'm starting to get back into it because it was good for driving traffic.
That's great. And so do you mind telling us what you're using Pinterest, what you're actually posting on Pinterest?
When I started out, I was mainly doing like wedding stationery, so invitations and stuff. So I was posting like photos of my own designs and things that I had done, but I was also posting things that were wedding related into different like boards where my invitations would fit into there. So it wasn't just my own designs posted over and over and over again.
Yep.
And then what I'm doing now and what my plan for this year is to start writing blog posts because I think a lot of people also search for like information and how to do things or the best ways to do things on Pinterest. So I'm going to start posting like blog post article type stuff to Pinterest as well.
Oh, good.
To help drive traffic to my website that way.
Right on. Thank you. Appreciate that. So again, a bit of a surprise for a lot of people to see that it's actually hovering in that, what I call the mid-range social media platforms. I mean, we've got the three big heavy hitters, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, in terms of the percentage of the Canadian market that they own. And then we've got all these others that hover right around 30% in terms of how much of the market that they have. I think there you go. That's it for the actual kind of platform to platform things. Have I skipped potential platforms? I obviously have. I did a workshop similar to this for the arts community probably about 1.5 years ago. And I had to do a lot of research going into it, even though I was a working artist for years. And I discovered that there are social media platforms for artists out there that I had never even imagined existed. There are social media platforms for pretty much every niche you could possibly imagine. So there's a good possibility that I have left something out. What I've tried to do is highlight the ones that I think that make the most sense for the people in our business community. If I've left something out that seems to match for your business, I would love to hear about it. If you want to throw it in the chat right now and say, hey, just a second, I've got 100,000 followers on such and such, then I'd love to hear about that. Robert's asking, are there any ideas what platforms professional associations find most successful recruiting and retaining members? That I don't know, Robert. My initial assumption would be that would be on LinkedIn. That seems to me the kind of thing that LinkedIn is kind of specifically made for. But I would have to do a little bit of research to find out if that's actually true. Yeah, because I mean, that's, in a professional association, I assume you're talking about either certified groups of professionals or people who are all working in the same field. LinkedIn is really a great place to find that. I will say that Facebook can be a very, very good place to find like-minded communities as well. People have gotten very good on Facebook at using private Facebook groups to create very, very focused, very meaningful, and very respectful communities on just about any topic you could possibly think of. They've really taken the place of what used to be website forums. 20 years ago, different websites, like there might be a website. Well, I mean, I used to manage forums years and years ago around whitewater kayaking. And they were a bit of the Wild West because it was the early days of this kind of thing. All of that discussion has moved almost exclusively to a social media platform I haven't talked about at all, Reddit, and to private Facebook groups. Private Facebook groups are brilliant that way. You have to do a search for them. And sometimes you have to ask to join those very specific groups as well. I love it because they'll have little skill testing questions that, you kind of have to be a geological engineer to be able to answer the question before they'll let you into the group. And they also kick people out really, really quickly if they're wasting people's time or being disrespectful. I hope that helps, Robert. I would say LinkedIn first and then private Facebook groups. You're welcome. So to wrap up, and just because I'm wrapping up does not mean that I'm not entertaining questions in the chat. We will actually pause at the end specifically for people to ask questions in the chat. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to address that just a second after I wrap up here, Ashley. So, bit of a wrap up. Choosing social media platforms. One, it's a work in progress. All of these things are shifting all the time. They change their algorithms. Who's using them changes based on, Instagram changed in a very fundamental way when TikTok scared the bejesus out of them, and they started rewarding people for making reels. And so use on Instagram changed dramatically. And then ironically, users, they got a bit of a throwback from users, and users like, wait a second, I like the way I used to have Instagram. And so Instagram's actually swung back a little ways from going directly at TikTok. So it's a constant shift. They can change their algorithm at any time. They can change the way they reward what you post at any time. And you really kind of have to just be in it for the long run, which brings me to the number 2 thing. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I get this from people all the time. People will come up here, they'll open a business, and they'll contact me like a month later, and they're just like, nobody's following me on Facebook. Just like, yep. You need to get on there. You need to be consistent. You need to represent your brand, which is what the Voima group, Amanda and Jeff are going to be talking about in the next 2 workshops. And you need to just be ready to start pounding on that anvil. You don't just turn Instagram on or turn Facebook on or turn any of these platforms on and just immediately, gain a huge effective following. If you're not in it for the long run, then I would caution you and say, then you might want to think twice about whether you get into it at all on that specific platform. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can interact with people a little bit more easily here. And I'm going to open up the chat. So Ashley put a comment in that looks like it's available to everybody. I've joined all the groups I can possibly find that pertain to our service, and then find that you have to scroll for jobs, but have gotten a lot of referrals that way. Yes, that is true. One of what I call the alternate ways to use a social media platform, especially Facebook. If you use groups effectively, how many followers you have can almost not matter. If you're posting into groups that have 18,000 targeted members and you only have 100 followers, but you're getting seen in that group of 18,000 people that really matter, then that's actually an incredibly effective way to use Facebook. So I was working with a woman here in the county that she recruits. You've seen the post, you've seen the billboards of the canoes that say staff parking, the Halley docs, who are recruiting doctors. We don't have on those social media platforms, we don't have a lot of followers, but what Wendy's done a great job of is finding groups that actually have a large group of people and posting to those groups. And she's getting engagement on those groups as opposed to on her own page. So it is an alternate way of looking at that. Ashley also says, when making posts for Facebook and Instagram, I really like using Canva. So Canva is an online graphics. I used Canva to produce my entire presentation today. I use Canva nearly every day as somebody that lives and works on social media. It's a great, great app. Autumn that did our workshops about in the spring will tell you that it is one of the #1 tools for doing effective social media marketing. And the great thing is Ashley's saying is that it will auto size for you. So you create an Instagram post and then you just push a button and it auto sizes it for Facebook. I will say 90% of the time you need to go in and tweak that design just a little bit, but we're starting to get into the actual use of Canva. Canva is an amazing tool for sure. What other kinds of questions do people have per day for what we've covered today? Or throw stuff in the chat. You're just like, this is, what I was really hoping for too is this, because that will help Heather and I design future workshops that might be more useful to people. I haven't left. I'm farming a link out for you just really quickly. And I'm coming back. Lauren, our Instagram ads similar as Facebook ads? Yeah, they're very similar. So if you delve into the Instagram ad business, again, I like to call it kind of no risk advertising. Unlike a newspaper ad where you're going to spend minimum $500 on it, and you're never going to know if somebody actually went to your website. With Instagram ads and Facebook ads, you only pay when somebody takes the action that you want them to. And that action could be to buy something. It could be to contact you. It could be to click through to your website. It could be any number of things. It could be to go watch a YouTube video. Any one of those things could be a marketable item. So yeah, they're very, very similar and fairly easy to get into. The great thing about them is that you set your budget and they will not overspend that budget. So you can kind of just float a trial balloon and say, I'm going to throw $20 at this ad campaign. I mean, who doesn't have $20, right? Like make your own coffee for 3 days. There you go. There's $20. At least it is for me. And then you can set a whole thing up and you can, once it hits that $20, it will actually shut your ad down and it will send you an email and say, hey, you spent your $20. Do you want to spend more? And you can say, no, that's good. It was entertaining. If you're really interested in Instagram, there is a woman that used to live and work here in the county who has become one of the experts on Facebook ads that I could connect you with if you're really interested in that. What's the best way to measure your social media efforts and whether they're getting results? There is really only one way to measure your social media efforts, and that's to look at your insights. So there's lots of different ways you can do that. Hopefully, you have a business account on any social media platform that you're allowed to have, as opposed to a personal account. If you don't, I would say that's one of the first things you need to change. And when you have that business account, then you have access to more data about what you're doing on social media than you could possibly use. You can go in and check and see how many 18-year-old males who live in Lithuania watched your video. I mean, literally, you could go in there and check that specific information. But if you're not looking at your insights on social media, it's very, very difficult to measure otherwise. There is the classic old trick people used to use in, the whole coupon thing where they would be like, call this number and ask for Brian. Well, there is no Brian. Brian is the code word for I read your ad in the Globe and Mail. And you can try something like that, but it's not near as effective as looking at your insights. That was a whole workshop. We actually presented an entire workshop on Insights, and it is up on the county economic development website that we'll send a link out to later on. If you had to pick one social media platform for a business that is directly service related, which would you choose to devote most of your time to? Insights don't give you information until you have 100 followers. Yes, you're right. There has to be a certain amount of data for them to measure. I apologize for skipping over that particular thing. That is directly service related. Ashley, can you tell me a little bit more about the service you're offering? Is that a service to a wide range of customers, or is that a service to specific businesses? If it were a service to specific businesses, I would very seriously think about LinkedIn. Service to specific customers. So service to specific customers, then I would seriously think about Facebook. Facebook is still the heavy hitter in social media. It gives you the opportunity, one, to reach the most people, and it gives you the best track record for them being able to take actionable items. There's some tweaks that you need to do there. Your customers have obvious, if they're specific customers, they have different characteristics than the general population. And Facebook, because of their algorithm, they're collecting data on people all the time, actually gives you pretty good tools to target those people. That's an entire workshop or an entire one-on-one consultation that I'd be happy to do with somebody. So again, general online marketing, I still believe Facebook is the winner. How many times a day should you be posting on social media? The general rule of thumb is, it's funny, ideal, you do what works. So, there's really good articles on how often and at what time to post to different social media platforms. I will send that link out in the follow-up email, as opposed to delving into that. It's very specific to every platform. And there's an incredible article that outlines every one of those. As in the case of most things, then you also just, you kind of have to experiment a little bit. A really good example right here in the county, Sir Sam's has new owners. Sir Sam's is kind of breaking the cardinal rule of posting 1 or 2 times to Facebook. If you follow them, they sometimes post like 7 or 8 times on a Saturday on one day. I know the person that manages their social media account, and their followers are growing by leaps and bounds right now. So that particular kind of maverick approach is actually working for them. My guess is that's because there was a whole bunch of potential followers out there that they weren't hitting yet. And at some point they'll hit those people, and that will begin to taper off, is what will happen. The quick answer, Lauren, to that is what works. I would say, I can tell you what I do at the county. I mean, this is what I do for a living. I post once a day to both Instagram and Facebook, and I do 3 or 4 stories every day on Instagram. So very good question, Robert. How do you keep up with this if you don't feel like you've got the time? You can hire somebody to manage your social media account. There are pluses and minuses to it. Obviously, it can be fairly expensive. You could pay somebody somewhere around $3 to $6 grand, and they basically would manage your social media posts for an entire year. There are some downsides to that, depending on what you are actually marketing. Obviously, there's the cost. But the other thing is that, it's like lots of things. I mean, I don't tune my own car up because I'm not good at it, and I send it to somebody else and I know it's well done. So there are some benefits to having somebody that does that on a regular basis do that for you. The other thing that's an incredibly powerful tool, if you're doing this, is on Facebook and Instagram, there is a business suite that's available to all business account owners. And I highly, highly recommend that you use that business suite. It gives you the ability to go in for a half an hour and schedule all the posts for an entire week at one time without getting sucked into watching videos, because you're actually posting from the app itself. And that's an entire kind of workshop, and that's a one-on-one consultation that I'm happy to do with anybody that would like to do that, to set up Meta Business Suite. It's an incredibly powerful, incredibly useful tool. I would rank it right up there with, I would say it's actually more important to me in my job than Canva is. It is, I'm on Meta Business Suite every single morning for a minimum of a half an hour, but that's my job. It's a huge time saver. Meta Business Suite is. And as Ashley said, Robert, that's where you can schedule posts. You can also schedule them directly in the app, but it's much, much easier on that. Yeah, so Heather, that's you, I believe, saying you did a bit of experimenting about the timing of posts. Yeah, it's very, very valid to experiment with the timing of your posts. I do it constantly. I'll kind of settle into a rhythm for a while, and then one day I'll just think, I'm shaking it up and I'm posting at a slightly different time today. It's wrapped up in a whole bunch of really, really interesting things. A lot of it's just human behavior. So in terms of the timing of posts, one of the things I'll tell you that affects it is Facebook still people access on their computer, and they're sitting at their computer and they take a break at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they pop onto Facebook because somebody walking past the office can't tell if they're working or not. They don't pop onto Instagram at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because somebody walking past their office can tell that they're not actually working on their computer. So they have a tendency to pop onto Instagram later on in the day or at their lunch break when they don't feel like they're kind of, you know, and it's purely has to do with whichever device they're using to do that. What is a Facebook business account? Glenn, any Facebook account, you can actually start a Facebook account, a Facebook business account, and I will send a link out for you. There's a very, very easy article on how to do that. You can either convert a private account to a business account. I would actually, if you're looking at a business or an organization, I would say start from scratch and create a business page specifically for that organization with an email specifically dedicated to that organization as opposed to your private email. And again, Glenn, that's the kind of thing that I do one-on-one with people all the time. Happy to help you with that. When doing on one-on-one, how much would that cost? Depending on how expensive the coffee is at the particular place that you and I meet, it could be anywhere from absolutely free to $4. Ashley, I offer these one-to-one consultations as part of my job with the Economic Development Department at the county. And this is available to every single business owner in the county. This is one of the services of the Economic Development Department. Me doing this workshop today is part of that work, and me doing one-on-one consultations with people is part of that work as well.
I just wanted to add with the timing that gets suggested, both whether you use Meta or Instagram or Facebook directly, I haven't had a whole lot of success kind of following what they say the traffic is. And I don't know if that's specific to HCDC and our customers aren't active at those times, whereas the bulk of users of Facebook are. But I think it is worth experimenting with that. So like try for a week posting when they tell you to, and then try for the next week posting when you think you should, and see what your analytics say. And then, you know, because some of this I think is also about you knowing your own business and knowing when your customers are active.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's some of that stuff in the background can be super helpful if you're wanting to be a little independent from what the platforms tell you to do.
Yep. Yeah, and your customer base is a customer base, right? I mean, like I said, it's way better to be talking to 20 customers than it is to be talking to 20,000 people who just are like, wow, cool picture. Again, I cannot reiterate often enough, your job is to market your business and be in contact with your customers. It is not to entertain people with groovy pictures. That can be part of connecting, but that's not actually your job. I was just met with somebody, the folks that owned Into the Blue Pizza, and she was wondering if she'd be on Instagram. And I was just like, well, your job is to make pizza. It's not to make cool Instagram reels. Do you need to sell more pizza? She's like, no, we can barely handle the amount. I'm just like, well, no, the question then is, no, you don't need to be doing that. That's always the question. Are you actually gaining customers through this? That's the difference between the conversation we're having and the general conversation about social media that you'll read on the internet all over the place, which is constantly trying to hook you deeper and deeper into the quicksand of social media. Don't fall for it. Okay. I think that's all I have for folks. Thank you very much. Heather, take it away.
Okay, so I've got a bunch of notes here about links that Tom referred to. And I'll send email out in the next few days once I get the recording up. So probably the end of the week, and we'll have the recording and then those links. And again, just to reinforce that both HCDC and the county are here to support you and your business or your not-for-profit. And so feel free to reach out to either Tom or I, and if we don't have the answer, we'll find some smart people who do. So thank you for coming. And I'll also include the link for next week, which is a branding 101 with the Voima Group. And this is really an introduction to like what the heck is branding and why is it important. And then there'll be a follow-up one if that sparks your interest on how to do that for your business. So those are the next two coming up. And another quick plug, if you'd actually like to see people in person, February 28th, we are hosting a networking event at Castle Antiques from 5 to 7. And both Tom and the folks from the Voima Group will be there as well. So you can talk to other business owners and the facilitators from these workshops. So,
and that would be the time where I'd be super happy to just, you and I grab our phones, and you're just like, Tom, I've never done an Instagram reel. And you and I are just going to sit down with our phones and say, here you go. Here's the buttons you push. Here's how it all happens. There you go. We'll be there as much to also drink coffee and eat really, really good treats.
Peter, did you have a question before we sign off? Or was that a wave? Maybe it was a wave.
Just a wave.
Okay, thanks.
The Zoom wave.
All right, everybody. So we'll follow up by email later this week and hope to see you at some of the future sessions.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.